you a business owner looking to learn more about credit so that you can use it to grow your business? Today I'm sitting down with Samuel Crane, who's a CEO of Desert Rivers Credit Union, and he shares not only the secret of how he took his company from a 13 million asset under management, now all the way up to over 100 million asset under management, but he also shares his tips and tricks of how you can leverage credit today in order to grow your business. His entrepreneurial story, which includes his health story, will leave you inspired to be able to take action today in your business. Let's jump into the episode. Samuel, thank you so much for being on here in Yesung's podcast. But before we go into talking about all the details of the business, could you shed some light? I was speaking to your assistant, and your assistant was saying that you've been also on a health journey. And one of the principles that I've been learning these days is be, do, have. You have to become the person before you do the things and to get all the awards and rewards. And so, yeah, what has been the journey like? What was the catalyst to the turning point of your health? And yeah, let's just start from there and then we'll work up to our business.
Great. I love that question. Really, the catalyst was, a few years into my businesses becoming successful, I started to spend a lot of time stressing and probably overdoing it. And, I basically let the idea of the excuse of like, I've got to do this for these businesses and I let go of myself. So I felt in the moment that I was sacrificing myself for the greater good. And in so doing, I gained, 50 pounds. I got the worst brain fog of my life and I got shingles. And I go to the doctor and he's like, well, shingles are stress induced.
Interesting.
So yeah, he's like, you got to stop having less stress. And I'm like, how do I do that in my businesses? I mean, I'm the CEO. Like I can't have less stress. He's like, well, you're just going to keep having health problems then. And then, that continued for a while and then COVID hit and COVID, getting COVID, well, all that stuff we went through, it made my brain fog worse. It made my stress go up, because I was running a credit union at the time and we had multiple branches and we weren't sure how to keep them open. And so stress went up, my health went even worse. And it got to the point where it was just breaking me. And I was like, man, I have either got to get this figured out or it's all going to fall apart. And so I started going to doctors and saying, hey, these are my problems. And especially around the brain fog, people really had no idea what to do with that. Because it was like, well, you're not, you don't have dementia, you don't have Alzheimer's, you don't fit into these boxes. We've done the scans, your brain's fine, but you're having these issues. And so, we tried a bunch of medicine, tried a bunch of different treatments, nothing worked. The only thing that really seemed to work is when I turned back in on myself and said, okay, I know I need to improve some things. I know I need to eat better. I know I need to exercise, and I know I need to lose some weight. And I need to focus also on like the spiritual and emotional side of myself too. Every time I did a little better on those things, my brain fog would improve. And I started saying, well, all these medicines, all these treatments, nothing's doing anything on that side. But there is some improvement when I improve my health, when I improve my mental clarity and my emotional stability, my spiritual stability. And so that is when I was like, I'm going to double down on this and I'm going to go all in because, I, at the same time, like I just had my 5th child and I remember looking at her and being like, I want to be there for her in 20 years, 30 years, I don't want to be brain dead in a few years. I felt like that's the track I was going on or my business is falling apart. And she just turned 7 today. Her birthday's, so that was 7 years ago when I was like, I got to make some changes. And
I'm curious to hear,
Yeah,
Samuel, how long were you in the business? So you were telling me before you were running multiple businesses.
right.
And so before COVID, it was already signaling the red flags. But then how many years were you in business? I guess 7 years ago was the point when your daughter was born. But
Right.
yeah, how
So
how long did it take? Yeah.
13 years ago is when I was named CEO of the financial institution.
Mm,
And yeah, so that was a difficult time because we were coming out of 2008, really that
right.
era.
Yeah.
And it was like end of 2011, 2012 when I took over,
Mm,
and we were still dealing with the financial crisis that
right.
had hit
Right.
all of us back then. And so we were overregulated, and we were just struggling to survive.
Mm,
And so every day was a struggle, and that's where, I kind of lost myself in that struggle. Is
mm,
we did survive, and now we're thriving, and we thrived through that time,
yeah.
but I did overextend myself and give myself up a little bit too much there.
Mm. It's always I find that entrepreneurs, it's I think the best imagery is like self whipping on the back.
Yes.
It's just like I need to get this done because I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for the workers that are working with me. And yeah, it's incredible to hear how of a difficulty season that you went through, but then because of the birth of your daughter, you're finally
Right.
saying, "I need to turn this around." And so, was there anything in that 7 years ago when your daughter was born that you it comes to mind? You're talking about something about spiritual, something about health, as well as what you're eating. What would you say is one of the things that really changed the most?
Well, yeah, so I the probably one of the biggest catalysts is I had a friend that was willing to push me a little bit. And we started out just by riding mountain bikes
Oh,
together.
nice.
And he would tell me like, "Hey, I'm coming by in the morning to pick you up. We're going to go mountain bike riding." I'm like, "Okay." And
Oh.
then he'd show up at 5:30 in the morning and text me, and I'm like, I'm still asleep, man. Just go without me." He's like, I'm not going without you."
Wow.
Um, and he would knock on my door. He'd call my wife. I'm like, it was annoying at first, but he didn't give up on me.
Wow.
And so that's where I started just trying to get my exercise right.
Mm.
But it was a while before I realized it can't just be getting, exercising here and there. But I saw the improvement, the exercise caused some improvement. And I'm like, okay, I got to go next level. And that's what
Mm.
I just kept doing was next level and next level. And
Right.
once the exercise improved, I realized the next level was diet. I had to improve my
Mm.
diet. And the first thing I did was I went on like a cleanse diet. It was a 30 day. It's called the Candida diet. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that.
Canada diet? No.
Candida. It's
Oh,
like Canada with an
Canada.
extra D in there.
Oh, Canada. Okay,
I'm probably not
interesting.
even pronouncing it right. Somebody's going to get mad at me,
I
but
was like, there's a diet after our country,
no.
Canada. What? I don't know about it.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Oh.
But yeah, it's essentially meat and leafy greens, some meat and leafy greens. And
Mm.
I remember my clarity coming back after that diet, like it leveled up.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, I'm on to something here. So what's the
Yep.
next step?
Mm.
And so then it was like, okay, I'm through the cleanse, but I don't want to just do this 30 days and be done. And
Yeah.
so I started going, I started with just intermittent fasting after that. And I lost, I don't know, probably 20 pounds over 6 months or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And then plateaued for a while and
Mm.
then made some more adjustments to my diet. And, eventually ended up losing 47 pounds over, a year and a half's time. And I've kept it off. And now I'm actually trying to build muscle, build a little more weight. Cause I'm like, oh,
Right,
okay,
right.
I didn't have quite as much muscle under all that fat as I thought I did, but
Mm.
yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And for the entrepreneurs, and in my channel, there's entrepreneurs that are just starting out, looking to do their side hustles as they do their 9 to 5. But the common, because I'm coming from a 9 to 5, I know that commonality that they have is they are also just, it's pretty below like health standards, right? And so,
Right.
if there's a word of wisdom or mindset that you sort of adopted in this season of transformation, what would that be that you can help share with us today?
So I learned two things. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm, so good.
I was broken, and I kept trying to give to the people I love, to my family, to my businesses, to my partners, my coworkers, but I was broken and it wasn't working. The other side of that is that to serve others, I have to serve myself as well.
Mm, that's so
So
good.
when I spend time on me, if I get up and the first thing I do is run to the gym and lift for an hour and run home, like I don't think of that as selfish. I think
Mm,
of that as I have to do that in order to show up for the
mm,
people I love.
mm. That's
And when
fantastic.
I eat properly, I'm doing it for the people I love.
That's an important part. Eating properly, not eating what you want.
Right.
Saying, I want some chicken nuggets because I feel better about it. But
Yeah.
that's the total. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm,
Yeah. So being intentional about the things I do brings greater ability to serve those around me.
mm. And speaking of intentionality, I think after COVID, in my circle of friends, a lot of the people have been more intentional about realizing, oh my goodness, like the world that we've been living up to this point, it's not a perfect world. And most of them are looking for different ways in entrepreneurship to now grow their business or start their business and to make their financial goals. And so I wonder if we can pivot our conversation now to sort of understanding what credit is, what are some of the misconceptions people have about it, and then after defining those things, we can go into your story about how you, I think you stated here, Desert Rivers Credit Union going from about 13 million in assets to over 100 million in assets. Like
Right.
that is a testament. So we'll love to get into your story, but first,
Yeah.
what is credit, and is it a bad thing?
Credit is very interesting, and I've seen it. I've been in the financial services industry for 23 years now. And so it's really taken on a bigger and bigger role every year that I've grown in financial services. And essentially, credit is a snapshot of your history of how you've done at paying back your loans. It's really that. And the whole idea is that we feel like we can get an idea of how you will do in the future based on your past.
Hmm.
And so if somebody has done a good job of paying on their loans on time and they've been responsible with greater and greater amounts of lending, then usually we can make the assumption that you'll continue to do those things and we will lend more and more money to you.
Hmm.
And then
So,
the credit score is an algorithm. And it's really interesting how the credit score has grown. FICO was actually started by the government, but they had to kind of set it aside because it couldn't be in the government. But for the longest time, that algorithm was like a very closely guarded thing. It was like, no, we can't tell anybody this equation, right?
hmm.
And the reason they did it initially was so that that you wouldn't discriminate against protected classes.
Hmm.
Because a long time ago, a lot of people would only lend to the people they wanted to lend to. And
Mm-hmm.
so they came out and they said, hey, we're going to create this regulation where we want you to use this FICO score so that you don't discriminate based on, a protected class.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the origin of credit. But credit has evolved over time. A lot of people don't even use the original FICO algorithms anymore. The one that
Hmm.
is getting more and more popular is called Vantage Score, which is an algorithm that a lot of it's basically been put together by the three major credit bureaus.
Mm-hmm.
And so they own that one instead of having to lean against FICO for their algorithm.
Mm.
So essentially that algorithm looks at your past and assigns a number to you. It says, based off of your past, we
Mm-hmm.
think you have this number of credit. And that number ranges between 350 to 850 typically.
Mm-hmm.
And so what banks and credit unions usually do is they take that number and they overlay it into their underwriting standards. So someone, let's say with an A plus credit, we consider a 740 and above. And if you have a 690 to 739, you're still considered an A credit, just not A plus.
Mm.
And then somewhere in the 660 to 690 range is B. And then below that is your kind of your C, D, and E paper, where you might have heard the term like subprime is where you kind of get in under 600 scores.
Mm. And so some of the times when we're late, especially in our family, my wife she runs to everything. She manages the flow of the cash, but she manages it down to the T. And so when it's due to pay for the date, she's always on like, we need to reroute the money from here to here to pay this amount. It's like, wow, okay, great. And now I'm realizing, as I am really trying to spring forth my journey of entrepreneurship and trying to leverage credit to grow, I now realize how important it was to be keeping a good history of that all. Whereas
Right.
before I didn't understand.
Yeah. Can I share one really cool credit tip that
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know about this hack? And that is, if you talked about your wife being the one that wants to make sure that things are paid on time.
Mm.
So when it comes to credit cards, it's not about paying on time. It's about paying right before your balance gets reported to the credit bureau.
Oh, okay. You have to say it one more time. I
Okay.
caught it, but I think the listeners may have listened. Yeah.
All right. So what you do is you go to your credit card issuer and you ask them, what day do you report to the credit bureau? Most of them
Mm.
report on like a certain day of the month, like the 25th.
Right.
So you want to make sure you pay your balance a couple days before that. Especially if you're paying your balance down, because what
Right.
happens is they report your current balance, whatever that day is, to the credit bureau, and your credit score is based off of your credit utilization. So whatever percentage of your credit line you're using will affect your credit score tremendously. So
Mm.
just that one hack, I've seen increase people's credit scores 10, 20, 30, 40 points.
Wow. And when you say points, someone that's starting out, let's say they don't even have 10,000 per month revenue coming in, like it's
Right.
from 0 to 10K. What, in your experience, does a range change? Is it like, oh, you're allotted for 5,000 all the way to like maybe now 10,000 if that credit improves?
Yeah,
And by the way,
exactly.
again, if you can't share the numbers, I
No,
understand as well.
I'm glad to share them. I'll share
Yeah.
exactly what we do. Every bank's
Mm.
credit union is a little different. But like if someone's just starting out, let's say they're a college student, or they just got their first job. A lot of times we'll take a risk that's maybe $1,000 line of credit, $2,000 line of credit usually is kind of the max,
Right.
because we don't know. You don't have a credit score at all. Some people will even require you to put cash down in order to give you a credit card. We don't do that unless they have a really bad credit. But if someone's just starting out, we'll usually, hey, we're going to take a chance on you. Here's a small credit line. And then we let them know, come back in 6 months and 12 months and ask us to increase it. And so you can request an increase I'd say every year. It's not a bad thing to do, to increase your credit lines. The optimal amount of credit cards to have is somewhere between 2 to 4 credit cards.
Per person. Yeah.
Per person. Yeah. And you want to keep your utilization under 20%. So that means whatever's getting reported to the credit bureau, if I have a $10,000 line, I want less than $2,000 to be reported to the credit bureau. So you want to pay it down as much as possible. And then you also want your credit cards to be from real financial institutions, not your local like clothing store.
The big box stores. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like, if they're like, oh, hey, do you want to open a credit card and save 5% on your purchase today? Don't do
Right.
that, because
Mm,
that will actually decrease your credit score.
because you do need to get your scores checked before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it'll.
But for whatever reason, if like the credit cards you have, I mentioned having 2 to 4,
Mm,
if one of those is a department store card, it
mhm.
actually hurts you. It doesn't help you.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know why the credit algorithm doesn't like those department store cards, but they don't.
Mm. Huh. I actually have a couple of Home Depot ones because I had a season in my life where I was into real estate investing.
Yeah.
But maybe I should get rid of that because I haven't been using it for about 2 years now.
And that's fine. Just make sure it's not your oldest credit line.
Right, right.
Never close your oldest credit line.
Hmm.
That's another tip. So like whatever card you got first in your youth, keep
Mm.
that the rest of your life, because
Oh,
that determines your age of credit. And so they'll always go back to that very first credit line that you opened and say, hey, they have X amount of months on your credit
mm,
report.
mm. Again, with this tip, a tip that I want to sort of bring to the table to see if it's valid, and then we'll move
Okay.
on to your story.
Okay.
I've realized in my entrepreneur journey, there's a difference between credit cards as well as line of credit. And
Yes.
when I was trying to pay off the vendors, like when doing the real estate renovations, I would be using the line of credit to pay them off. When I realized I could have used the credit card and then kept the cash of the line of credit. And so, is
Exactly.
this a sound way of operating things when you are trying to access credit to build your business?
Yes. And especially in today's day when points are so lucrative, rewards points. So yeah, use your credit cards as much as you can, and then lean against your credit, a line of credit for cash flow. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
So that you are cash flow positive to continue the business.
Yep.
Awesome. So then I get it from the expert. That's a green check mark.
Green check. Yeah. Plus you'll end up with a bunch more rewards points too.
That's right. That's right. The arrow, we call it arrow points here.
Arrow
With
points.
yeah,
Yes.
airlines. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, Samuel, we'd love to hear about your story about how when you got in the midst of a financial disaster, you're going into this credit union, Desert Rivers Credit Union, and over the years, you've changed from 12 million to 100 million assets under management. That's, to me, is like phenomenal. And yeah, where should we start in this story? I know you also mentioned about mindset and things of that nature, how you train your staff with mindset as well.
Right. Yeah. I can kind of go into both of those. The first hurdle we had was like I said, everyone was just coming out of that financial crisis, and kind of the pendulum swung one way, which
Mm-hmm.
there were some financial institutions that were not doing things well, and those ones all went under. But the problem is the ones that were left, we were expected to pay for the sins of all of those financial institutions that were doing poorly and went under. And so what was left over was a bunch of regulators who were upset at us for allowing those other financial institutions to do what they did. And so we kind of paid the price, which was over-regulation for a while. So, I mean, I was a $13 million credit union, we had one branch, and we would have sometimes 8 regulators show up for weeks at a time, which is way more than is needed.
Now, Samuel, just for
Yes.
me and the listeners, when you say regulators, I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking of like repo man, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's a
Sorry.
totally wrong
No,
term.
no. It's the government agencies that are overseeing us. So we're regulated by the NCUA, and so maybe a better term is examiner. Would examiner be
Examiner. Yes. Yeah.
perfect?
Right.
Yes. So all of these examiners were hired because the financial crisis happened, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, we need to make sure that banks and credit unions are doing better." And so the government spent a bunch of money to hire more examiners. Well, those examiners, the only people who were left were the financial institutions that were doing well. And so we got pounded, for the next couple of years. And that's what I was dealing with when I first went in there, was just over regulation. And, they were pushing me to turn in my fold, basically to
Oh,
walk
wow.
away, and let's just,
Wow.
why don't you just merge with a bigger credit union or something like that.
Huh.
And I didn't feel like that was right. I had been hired to do a job and to grow the credit union and do the best I could for our community. And so that's what we set out to do.
Mm.
And, at first there was only I only had 4 people on my staff besides me. And
Wow.
because of where we were at, we'd been in the negative for about 2 years.
Mm.
So we had to run really lean. So I was the CEO, the loan officer, the cheerleader, the strategist, I was trying to
Wow.
do it all and keep us kind of floating. And there was a moment where we'd run month end every month to see what our profit was for the end of the month, what our revenue was. And there was one month where we earned $26 in positive income. And I almost started crying. I jumped up for joy. I was so happy. And
Wow.
my assistant manager was like, "Why are you happy about $26?" I'm you don't understand. We
Yeah.
just changed the trajectory of this institution.
Mm.
And we never looked back. We've grown positive income, positive growth from then on. One of the things that we did early on was we instituted a mindset shift for all of our staff. And it was a really simple concept, which is that people want to be treated like people.
People want to be treated like people. That's
Yeah.
great.
And in financial services, you kind of get used to transactional stuff. It's hey, here's my deposit, here's my withdrawal, what's my balance. So we tend to think of people as objects. And that just, oh, you need a balance, you need some money, you need to put some money in. And so it's really easy to objectify people that are coming through the door. And so we instituted this idea and this training, and really we put it into into our organization as a whole, which wasn't hard because there was only a few of us at that point.
Right.
But we all just made that determination that we were going to treat people as people. So we started caring about their challenges, about what their goals were, what they were struggling with financially, and really digging into them and asking about it and trying to understand what they wanted. And what we found out was that the more that we cared about someone's struggles and challenges, the more they wanted to do business with us.
That is such an important principle, because as a credit union, again, I really don't know much about it as well, but the imagery that I got it from just watching cartoons back in the days in 90s and 2000s is saying oh, that's it's not good. It's not good to leverage credit or go to that place. But and the reason why I viewed it as bad is because you would be treated just like that, like an object. But when
Right.
you say those words, people want to be treated like people, and how you showed care, it gives me a whole perspective of, oh my goodness, I've been ignoring this thing. And I think a lot of the listeners too, they might think any of the credit union that they may think of around the block around their house, they would never approach it because they have this bad thought towards them. But I think this is really refreshing to hear from a leader's perspective of how you led with that with your company.
Thank you.
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to mention that.
No, I mean, and that's kind of where it started. Was sometimes if we treat people as people and we see them as they're trying to reach their goals, there were times where you could approve a loan and treat someone as a person, but there's also times you could deny a loan and say, hey,
Right.
this loan isn't in your best interest right now. There's some other things that we have to do. And that started leading us to helping people who maybe didn't understand credit very well.
Mm.
And we started to attract a lot of our underserved population, people who had never been to a bank, because they
Mm.
heard that we would actually treat them like a person
Yeah.
and like help them take their first step. And so a lot of these individuals, um, had been living in America for a long time, but they had never had any type of credit. And
Mm.
so it was just like, okay, if you can just we'll take this first step with you, maybe start you off with a small credit card or a small car loan. And if you'll trust to pay us on time, we'll give you more.
Mm.
And it's so cool because a lot of these individuals that came to us didn't understand credit, were a little afraid, but they took the leap of faith with us. That
Mm.
was, 12, 13 years ago. Now those people have grown into a better life. They have multiple cars. They own a home that they've never had a home ownership before.
Wow.
So we've taken people who are like really afraid to jump into credit, and then we've helped them leverage credit in order to have a better life.
Mm. Samuel, important question. Why lead with care when I think when you said the words pound, even the examiners were not just the repo men, but the examiners were pounding on you guys. Why was care important for you at that season of trajectory of your business?
So care's always been a really big piece of my life. I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a family man, and I saw the benefit of care and concern outside of work. And
Mm.
I remember, my wife and I talking about just like this concept of treating each other as people, treating our friends as people, and how easy it is to like see people as objects.
Mm.
And I think we went to a class once where we talked about it a little bit, and that really spurred that on. And I remember talking to her and saying, I wonder if we could apply this to my business.
Mm.
Like,
When you say class, is it like a high school class? You're invited to
no,
speak?
it was like if I remember right, it was like a webinar that we attended on
Okay.
mindset.
Mm.
And they just talked about this concept of treating people as people, and
Mm.
was like, that's a pretty cool concept. And I'm a firm believer if something works in like a family life or outside of work, if it's a true principle, it
Mm.
should work inside a business as well.
Mm. That is so good. If something is working inside a family life, it should also work in a business life. And when I was growing up, I didn't have much examples of business leaders in my
Okay.
life, but um, definitely, yeah, I think that's totally resonating in terms of how that should ring true. Like it's a
Yeah.
common sense when somebody says it's like, oh my gosh, that's 100%. It should be 100% true. But
Right.
somewhere along the line, I know I have been wearing I call it the badge of honor. Like I've done it by myself. I've done the
Right.
renovation, picked up a hammer. Good for me. I'm sweating blood and sweat and tears, and I realize it's not good for the person to go it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when that concept is really interesting, because at first we started just applying the idea of treating our customers, our members that come through the door as people. But as we grew, we grew our team members as well. We're at 33 employees now, but as we grew, we realized we also have to treat each other as people. And we have to recognize that even though inside of the credit union, people are doing different jobs, and
Mm.
sometimes those jobs might be in kind of a different direction, we're all going together for the good of the whole organization.
Mm.
And so we started to recognize that a lot of the conflict we might have inside of work was just due to misalignment. It was because they didn't understand what the goals of the organization were, and maybe their part in that. And so when you get heads butting, you're like, well, I had to actually look back and be like, well, I think it's on me a little bit, because
Mm.
I've given them goals that are incongruent with each other. And how do we change those so that it's all in alignment with everyone? so that we all care about each other's goals, even though we have different jobs to do.
You know, when you say those things, I'm reminded of other business owners who have about like 3 to 10 workers, various different jobs, businesses that they're running. But I wonder if you could shed some light on your leadership experience about. So I've heard you say you do strategic planning as well as, you do mindset exercises with your team as
Right.
you're starting your meetings. Could you share a couple of exercises that that helped reshape the focus of the alignment? Because I
Yeah.
know when you said that, I was like, oh, some of my friends come into mind who are running businesses, but they have been talking to me complaining. It's like, I can't get this person to show up, or like person's talking way too much about something else rather than work. And
Right. Yeah. I'll share 2 exercises that I really like. One is just asking everybody in the room what their biggest struggle is right now. And then as you go around, when someone says what their struggle is, we can offer to help them with that. So if if somebody says, "Man, I'm really struggling with this loan right now. I think it should be approved, but I don't know. Maybe I'm struggling with the credit or the debt ratio." And then somebody's like on the other side of the room might be like, "Well, I actually worked with that person a couple of years ago, and I have some information that might be helpful to you. Let me get with you after this, and we can see if I can be of assistance." Or if so as I think as we have struggles of our own, we realize we think sometimes we're siloed, and just by saying I'm struggling with this, it's my biggest struggle right now. Even if nobody can help, just saying it, getting it out there, and everyone going, that's hard. I'm gonna try to help you with that. Just the fact that they know that you're struggling, they may start looking for ways to help you. And that exercise can take 5 minutes, and it's a super good way to start a meeting. The other one, especially if you're like sitting down to a meeting where things might be maybe a little more high powered or maybe even get confrontational. What I like to do is an exercise where you say, "Hey, let's talk about 2 different ways we could go about this meeting." The first way is if we were kind of in a negative mindset, like how would we maybe treat this meeting if we were in a negative mindset? And you might be like, "Well, I'd probably only be thinking of myself, and I might be checking my phone all the time, and I'd only care about what my department needs." And then you list all those, and then on the other side you say, "How would we go about this meeting if we were in a positive mindset? If we were really trying to see the organization as a whole and understand everybody as a person?" And then you write down like, "Oh, it's kind of the opposite stuff." It's like, well, I would care about everybody's opinions, and I would listen, and I would be attentive, whatever those things are. And just by brainstorming those things, now everybody is looking at ways to be positive through the whole meeting.
Wow. So you set the expectations, and you start with a negative one first on purpose, or does it matter?
Yeah, it's easier because it's way easier to be negative.
And then
If you start
when
with
you
the
finish with
positive,
when you finish with the positive, that's what they remember.
they're gonna end with that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, wow, that's phenomenal tips as a person in a position of leadership. And so you're now saying, "Hey, folks, let's start caring about the people," and you're realigning your, I guess, the direction of the ship. And
Right.
so, could you share with us? I guess I know each business at their tiers of revenue, they have a bottleneck. And when you're jumping from 13 million to 100 million, I'm
Right.
sure you must have gone through like 2 to 3 different bottlenecks of the business.
Yes.
But is there a story that comes to mind that you want to share with us that's memorable for you to be like, wow, I overcame this? Like,
Yeah. There's like you said, there's lots of different bottlenecks that happen. One of the first ones was like opening up a new branch. We had always been just one financial institution, one branch, and we decided to open up a second branch in an adjacent town. And that took a lot of like teamwork because we really were doubling ourselves. We were making ourselves reclaiming ourselves in a way. So we had to go through a big hiring phase. We had to buy a building and renovate the building. We had to get all those employees trained. And then on top of that, we had to make sure we were still doing our regular jobs, and we were still a pretty small institution at that point. I think at that point we probably had like 7 or 8 employees, and we were adding 4 additional employees to open this new branch.
Wow.
And so that was a big bottleneck. And I remember being like, because at that point I wasn't the loan officer anymore. We'd grown to the point where I could hire loan officers. I wasn't wearing, multiple hats. I just had the hat of CEO. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have to dig in for a time as I'm opening this new branch and be that person again. So I just remember like the first little bit opening that branch, me and my assistant manager, we were just there every day trying to make sure that place was going well and everything was smoothly going so that it could survive and grow.
I think when I hear those stories, and again, when I see social media, I think there's a text that says, it's so funny how some people, when they get to a certain stage, they don't do things that are beneath them anymore.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So like, they're like, oh, I'm at the stage now. Somebody else take care of it. My hands are going to stay clean. But why is that philosophy a bad one to keep in mind as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think there is merit to definitely pulling up. Like if you don't have a leader that can and think strategically and be a little bit detached from the day-to-day operations of things, then no one's head is up to guide the ship, right? If everybody's on the ship working on the sails and no one's actually guiding the ship, then that's not a good thing long-term strategy. So I think people kind of lean against that, but there's every once in a while where it's all hands on deck, and the leader has to be okay to jump in and do whatever is needed. And that could require, doing loans, or it could require digging into underwriting. It could require getting into finances. Whatever is needed during that time, I think is really important. I do think it's optimal to eventually get the point where you can be steering the ship on a pretty regular basis. And I have seen other entrepreneurs where they always think they have to be in the trenches. And that's a scary thing, because if you can't pull out of the trenches, you won't actually be able to like think at a higher level and grow your business. Because you do have to, at some point, you have to say, okay, strategically, how do we go to 10x? How do we get to where we really want to be?
In your experience, and that letting go is a easy one for those who have gone through it. They've held on it so long, and they're like, it just hurts too much. They have to let go. But for those that are still holding on, still doing everything, and they need to grow, their business is just being pressurized to grow. Is there something that you've sort of realized in wisdom that you can share with us? Yeah,
I'd love to share. So I was attending a conference once, and this gentleman had done some research on credit unions that were rapidly growing, and he actually called every CEO and interviewed them. And what he found out was that in every single case, and these were all what they were considered like smaller credit unions, like 1 branch, 2 branch credit unions. And in every single case, the CEO that was growing rapidly was mostly steering the ship. And they had grown to the point where they had let go, and they were able to then think strategically, make strategic changes so they could guide their team to a better place. And I remember that hit me so hard. And I was like, I was already kind of doing that, but I doubled down. I'm like, okay, I need to let go of some of these tasks that are maybe low energy and maybe not as high dollar value tasks that
Mm.
I had been doing, and really level up into that high energy, high dollar value task, because my
Mm.
team needs me to lead us.
What were some of the items for you? I know every entrepreneur is different,
Yeah.
but what were the items that you were letting go that were low energy and low dollar value for you?
Well, initially it was just getting out of the operational side of the business. So it was approving loans, it was underwriting loans, and it was writing loans. And what was so difficult is because I had gone a couple of years where I had done the loans, and this, for anybody who's ever originated loans, you
Mm.
kind of become a superstar. Because
Mm.
especially in a small town where I live, small town, people see you in the grocery store and they're like, "That's the guy that gave me the loan for the new car. He's the guy that helped me with my house loan." And
Mm.
and you gain that status, and that was really hard to let go, and to tell people, "I no longer can write your loan for you, but if you sit down with Keith, he would be amazing, and I'll keep an eye on it to make sure it's okay." But
Mm.
I'm no longer doing that. And that was so hard to let go of, because now we write, you know, $90 million in loans or whatever it is, and I'm a part of that, but I never get to actually be seen as the
Mm.
guy that did it. And so I have to be okay with that as not being the superstar anymore. I have to allow my team to be the superstar in the eyes of my customers and my members.
Mm. And it goes to show how you are growing as a leader who's not only just growing for the sake of growing, but being fruitful in doing stewarding your talents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand as we're landing the plane here, I understand you're also opening up a new branch. And I know you are getting into the social media side of things as
Right.
well. Could you share us an insight of why you are approaching social media and how that new location that's opening? I think it was the location in Moab, Utah. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're actually building a headquarters there in Moab, Utah. It's going to be a 2-story building, about 11,000 square feet. It's going to be a beautiful addition to that community. And we're so happy to invest back into that community that's where our original branch was,
Mm.
back in 1957 when that credit union was started. And so we're coming back and building this nice, beautiful building in a place that has supported us for decades. But to go back to your other question, which is
Social media? Yeah,
what is
social
social
media.
media? Yes,
Yeah.
it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, which is, as I've pulled out and kind of become more of a strategic leader, I
Mm.
have more influence on more people by, by whatever it is I do. It ripples through all of my employees, through all of my organization, down through, I have 10,000 members now.
Wow.
And so what I've noticed is that I can also influence other people through social media.
Mm.
And it really is the new platform of our age, where if I want to be a good leader, I
Mm.
have to step up and be willing to share what I've learned
Mm.
with those individuals. And the best way to do that is through social media.
Were you always I mean, when I go through your social media, like you look very comfortable. Was that always the case or
No,
did that
no. I mean, I've grown in my comfort of speaking over time, which is good. I mentioned I'm a spiritual man, and I'm involved in my local church.
Mm.
And over the last decade, I've gotten more and more opportunities to speak there, and that
Mm.
that gives me a lot of confidence to be able to speak in front of an audience on a regular basis. Um, but even just being in front of a camera, it takes time to become confident. And so I made a goal to try to post regularly, 1 to 3 times a day. And
Mm.
that, just doing that, trying to post on a regular basis, has made me better.
Mm.
Um,
What
you know,
platforms were you using? Was it I
yeah,
think Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram, Facebook, those two right now are the main ones. We do want to expand to to TikTok and to YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, that's the right now. I'm just like, okay, I'm still learning. I feel like
Yeah.
it's fresh for me. And this goes
Mhm.
back to that original concept, which is like sometimes the leader has to do something that's important, but it's new to him too, him or
Mm.
her. And it's okay for me to struggle for a while doing something maybe even poorly, because I'm learning myself on how to become good at social media and have a better presence.
And I think that's so encouraging to understand, even at somebody that's a high level entrepreneur as well as a CEO that's managing hundreds of millions of dollars, he's still currently trying something new, which he knows is going to get results in the end. And so
Right.
I think that should be an encouragement to anybody of all different levels as well as age as well.
Well, and it goes back to your original comment. What were those three things that you mentioned that you
Yeah, the three principles, be, do, have.
be, do, have?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in order, go ahead.
Which I love the idea of social media, because I'm trying to be,
Mm,
I know I'm not the best social media person, but I believe that I can be, and I'm going
mm,
to try to be, and
mm,
eventually I hopefully will be. But where real change, where real transformation starts is changing ourselves, transforming ourselves.
mm. That's so beautiful. And yeah, as we land the plane here, I wonder if you can share one more tip with the audience. From your experience, uh, what has entrepreneurs that scaled and grown to a successful business
Okay.
do with credit and leverage, learning to leverage
Oh,
credit
okay.
versus the ones who do not and stay stuck?
Yes. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. The best thing you can do really is to work with your local advisor. So a lot of people, they don't actually build a relationship with their business banker,
Mm,
with their business relationship manager. Um, your business relationship managers know how to get you to utilize credit. They want you to utilize credit because it's their job to put more and more out there. A
mm,
lot of business owners are afraid to talk to them because they're like, oh, I don't know what they'll say it to me or how they'll think of what I want to do. But really building that relationship into the point where they understand where you're trying to go, and and they can then impart with you, here's what you need to do to get there.
mm,
Whereas a lot of people who just kind of get stuck, they try to go on alone. They don't
mm,
ever build a trusted advisor team to
mm,
take them to that next step.
mm. So even from the entrepreneur side, learning to look at the lenders as people who wants to help you rather than take advantage of you. I
Yes.
think that's so
Yes.
beautifully said.
Yeah, and
Awesome,
there are
Samuel.
going to be
Yeah.
some that like you get a bad vibe from. You want to stay away from them, but there's a lot of people out there who want to help you.
Mm, that is true. And I guess due diligence, is that the word?
Due diligence, absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah, interview them. You want them to become friends and become like almost the point where they're not going to recommend something that would go against you because they they're close and they care about you and your family and your business.
so someone being honest about the lending opportunities rather than just trying to say, "Oh yeah, just take every loan that you can," and like,
Yeah,
so that's one of the things. Oh, that's a really good tip. Yeah.
especially in today's day when you you just have so much there's so much misinformation out there about lending, and everybody online wants to try to give you a loan, but you don't really know if those loans are good for you or not.
Mm,
So yeah, having a trusted advisor is huge, and it could be a banker, but it could also be a family friend. It could be a CPA. You
mm.
you want to kind of have a team together of people that you really take advice from.
That's so good because I was only thinking of my banker here in around the block, but you're saying no, like go to an accountant as well as some other
Yeah,
people that are in the business, understanding the financial systems.
right. And constantly be talk to other bankers. Get their opinions. Well, what would you think of this and that? And
Mm.
and you'll start to kind of find which ones you resonate with, and
Mhm.
then you can spend more time developing those relationships.
So the principle is ask the questions and see if you resonate, and also if they're being honest to
Yeah,
seeing how they can help you with your goals.
right.
Yeah.
One of the things when you're doing your due diligence with like a business banker or a relationship manager is to really talk to them about like um, what they're allowed to do. You know, how hard is it to approve a loan? What is the loan committee look like? Are
Mm.
you a part of the loan committee? Because,
Wow.
with big banks, sometimes the person that they initially put you with is way down here, and
Mm.
they don't have any influence on the loan committee. But you really want to find a relationship manager that is going to be a part of that loan committee at some point, at least be
Mm.
able to advocate for you in the
Mm.
future.
Wow, that is such a brilliant, I think, advice. Because again, I would not have thought to even ask those kind of questions. But Samuel, thank you so much for
You're
today's
welcome.
time. And where can people find you? And is there anything that you'd like to share that you're working on next that we should be on the lookout for?
Absolutely. You can find me on my Instagram handle, which is at Samuel Crane, CEO. And I would love to have you follow me. If there is any credit tips that you are in need of, I actually have a credit tip document. If you just, message me credit, I'll send you that document. And we talked about like 10 or 15 today, but I've got a
Yeah,
bunch more
it was
on
so
how to
good.
improve your credit. So send it to me. I also am involved in an IT company. So if anybody has any IT needs, welcome to reach out as well. We'd love to help you there. But yeah, banking and IT, just excited to help anybody that is interested.
And is it just regional, or do you think it's
Our IT company is actually not it's worldwide. We can help someone worldwide with the IT company, but
hmm,
our credit union is regional. But I'm still happy to share tips for anybody who's outside of Utah.
right? Amazing. So if you're a listener tuning in from Utah, make sure you go find Samuel because he will be your man.
Yeah, we'll help you out for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the episode today. And yeah, we'll all catch you in the next one.
Thank you so much.